You should have done that into the mic, man. Why not? We could have had the burp. It's not like you wouldn't cut it out. I feel like the burp followed by my like earnest laugh would also have potentially been a very funny sound effect to have kicking around. Just remember that next time you have to burp.
Welcome back, citizens of the Niro Nation, to our hero De Niro, the only podcast that is watching and recapping Robert De Niro's entire filmography in random order. I'm Mike, and with me as always is my co-host Mike.
I'm here, and we're not going to be doing that this week.
Not at all. No, really getting ahead of me, huh? Today is a very special episode of the podcast. It is our 20th episode spectacular. So we're going to take a step back from recapping Robert De Niro's filmography and just reflect a bit on how we've grown as podcast hosts, some of our favorite and least favorite moments from the previous 19 episodes. And just, and also respond to some listener letters that we've received. So I'm very excited for this one. If you're looking for a passionate discussion about Killing Season, that's actually coming next week, but hopefully you'll stick around from this break-in format. And I think, depending on listener feedback from the citizens of the Niro Nation, this is the sort of thing we may want to do every so often, maybe every 10 episodes, do some sort of special episode that breaks format. So be sure to let us know what you think at our herodeniro@gmail.com. Mike, are you ready for this?
Born ready. Let's do it.
Okay, I'm almost ready. I'm going to go ahead and crack open a brewski for this
Fair
one.
enough. Good. Yep.
Yeah.
You do yours and then I'll do mine. So
I'll tell the listening audience I have a Genesee Brewing Mango Peach Kolsch. I'm going to crack this bad boy open right now.
I am drinking a Narragansett Presents Dell's Shandy beer. It's refreshingly different. It says all those things on the front.
Just like this podcast.
Yeah. Yep. All right. So let's crack it open. I bet you that sounded great.
Yeah, oddly satisfying beer can opening ASMR 10-hour compilation. Cheers.
Cheers to Robert De Niro. Really to you, our listeners, and citizens of De Niro Nation. I mean, Robert De Niro is going to make the movies whether we make this podcast or not, and he almost certainly hasn't listened to it. So it's really you guys who are keeping this afloat.
Statistically speaking, most people have not listened to it. So this is really a big thank you to all of the citizens out there.
Well, and I think that if he had listened to it, unless he really hated it, he'd probably talk about it, right? I mean, there isn't a Robert De Niro podcast otherwise. So like he'd discover it and it would be like the Robert De Niro podcast. Like he'd probably care about it, right? Does he have like a Twitter? Does Robert De Niro tweet?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Well, so if he's not on social media, I guess he'd have no way to talk about it. So maybe he wouldn't. Maybe he does listen. I don't know.
I think maybe his publicist would send us a polite message or something like that.
That would be nice. That would make me feel really happy.
All right. So I want to set the stage for this episode. I have a few different categories of discussion for us today. We're going to talk about some episodes by the numbers, our average ratings, our favorites and flops, some hypotheticals, some behind the scenes discussion, and then round it out with some letters from our listeners, the loyal citizens of the Niro Nation. How does that sound to you?
That sounds great to me.
So, Mike, we're 20 episodes in 20 weeks, 5 months. How do you feel about the podcast, its current state? You know, where we've been and where we are. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, it's tough to answer this question because I don't want to brag, right? And people who know me in real life know that I'm not somebody who dislikes bragging. But I don't want to brag on the pod. But I do think that this is going to sound a little braggadocious, and it's not intended that way. This is my honest assessment of the podcast. I think that we have improved so much over the past 20 weeks. So I think that's what I reflect on, honestly, is just, my God, like I'm afraid to go back and listen to like Greetings in Ezra because I know they're so terrible. When I reflect on just like what it felt like to record the first few episodes, what it felt like to listen to the first few episodes, the issues that I noticed with the ways we managed the conversation and all that stuff. And then I think about the way I felt maybe, really for the past 10 episodes, but especially for the last 5 episodes, we have reached like, there's a polishedness to it, to the way we're speaking, but also I think to our analysis and kind of the ways we've fallen into, our roles in the kind of on-pod relationship. And I'm just really pleased with the way it's going. And I know that, we can't be that good yet. We've only been doing it for 20 weeks, right? So like, but we're still going to continue to get so much better, which is exciting to think about, like ways that we can improve that maybe we're not even noticing because we've cleaned up a lot of the most obvious stuff that we noticed in those first few weeks. And I'm also just really proud to know that we have at least a small group of folks listening consistently every week. And that's tremendously just really cool and satisfying for me to know that when we're putting out an episode that there's a group of people who are listening to it and who are interested in hearing what we have to say and find us either, refreshing or illuminating or entertaining or whatever. And it's just really cool. And it's also, I don't know, it's a fun new way to watch movies. It's definitely like watching, not all of them, but the ones that are worth really paying attention to, definitely watching things with a closer eye for this podcast than I do when I'm just watching stuff for fun usually, and kind of feels like being in English class again in a really fun way. Like, it's cool. I'm having a great time. I'm loving it. 20 episodes in. I'm so happy that we have another 80 that we're going to do. Almost 90, really.
God, yeah, we sure do. No, I think you said it beautifully. I second everything you said. I think it's so rewarding that we have the citizens of the Niro Nation listening every week, tuning in, and I value your feedback. So if you have any more suggestions for breaks in the usual format or ideas for segments we can do or ways that we could possibly streamline, let us know at the email, ourherodeniro@gmail.com. We are open to that feedback. I want to play with format more a little bit. But I found it so rewarding, not just to know that some people are listening and actively engaging with the podcast, but I can feel the improvement. And you're right. Like, how good can we possibly be? We've only been doing it for 20 episodes. It's really not that much in the grand scheme of things. But I can feel that we've tightened up as hosts. See, the entire process, from the recording sessions to the editing, I feel like the final product has become so much more polished than it was in our first few episodes. And I feel that same sense of dread about the thought of re-listening to our first handful. So a real shout out to the OG fans who were there with us from the beginning, because you had to suffer through some stuff to get to where we are right now. With that being said, I want to get into my first category, the numbers.
I would love to. Yeah, I would love to talk about the numbers.
We're going to start out with our most played episodes. So just to be clear, this is excluding our YouTube channel. You can find us on YouTube at Our Hero De Niro. We repost the podcast there because the way it calculates plays is very wonky. So our top 3 most played episodes are number 3, 0 Day, part 1. Number 2, Greetings. And number 1, Ezra.
What? Oh, I'm so happy you didn't tell me this beforehand.
That was by design.
Crazy. So I had one thing I wanted to say at the beginning, like something I thought I would say, but I feel like I have so much to say now that I know that Ezra is number 1. Just some thoughts, right? So here's my first thought. Either people really hated the first episode we did of 0 Day, or people really hated the first 3 episodes of 0 Day and didn't go back for the second half. Like, where was 0 Day part 2 on the ranking below the bottom 3? Or below the top 3, rather.
Don't worry about 0 Day part 2 right now. It's much lower. But you're wrong. That's not why 0 Day part 1 was so popular. It's popular because that is the episode you chose to promote on your personal social media.
Oh, that's right. So it's really not that interesting, actually. Maybe I should promote more episodes on my personal social media. It's probably not a terrible idea. Yeah. So then here's some other thoughts that I have. I don't know. The Greetings and Ezra episodes are quite bad. So I think it's really sad that those ones are most listened to. And I'm sad to imagine the people who picked it up, right? Who thought oh, Robert De Niro podcast.
I'll start with the
really
first episode.
And then they went and listened to the first 2 episodes and they were like, this podcast sucks. And I earnestly think I think Frankenstein, just because we were kind of learning to have Caroline on the podcast, I think was a little bit of a downgrade in quality in my view from the previous 3 or 4 episodes. But even Frankenstein, but especially Rocky and Bullwinkle and Joy are 500 times better than Greetings and Ezra. The quality of our discussion analysis and your editing has improved by such an absurd amount since then. So that kind of bums me out to think about. Yeah. So in that way, I'm kind of sad, actually, that you told me now, because I feel like my reaction is kind of earnest sadness, which is a bummer of a way to feel during this episode, but I'll be okay. I'll get over it. What do you think about it?
No, I agree. It's rough because I think Yeah, I think it's interesting, that someone would choose to start with the earliest episode. You're just going to get the lowest quality possible because, like you said, we were trying to find. It took a while to settle into that natural dynamic because it is not exactly the same as hanging out and having a conversation in person, which we obviously have been doing for more than a decade now. It is a different dynamic when we're also handling hosting and recapping and leading into different segments. So I do think there's a marked quality improvement with the latest episodes. And the silver lining there is that I think some of our more recent episodes, I think generally are getting more listens. It's just that they've been out for less time than the first couple of episodes have been. Yeah. So I think that is a big thing that has to do with it. Are you ready to hear our least played episodes?
Yeah.
I'm going to do it in reverse order from third least played to the number one least played episode.
Yep.
Number 3, 0 Day Part 2. Number 2, 15 Minutes. And our number 1 least played episode, Righteous Kill.
I'm fine with that. Honestly.
Yeah. Do you have any theories about why those are the least played episodes?
I don't think that I can really speak to 15 Minutes or Righteous Kill other than I think those are in the same category as Ezra and Godsend for me.
That's what I think.
Like movies that nobody's
They're not
ever
popular.
heard of. I do think that for 0 Day, right, it is probably a mix of like your, I think obviously, like empirically based explanation, right? Like I posted one to my social media that drove up the listenership a lot. But I do think right, 0 Day was on the Netflix top 10 for like a couple weeks, but we know that the way that Netflix decides what is in their top streamed shows is like, it doesn't have any strong correlation to quality because you could like watch the first 30 minutes of the first episode and it would still be enough.
It doesn't mean you listened to the back half of the episodes.
Right. So I'm guessing that joking about the like quality of the 0 Day episode that we did aside, I bet you a lot of people didn't go back for the second half of 0 Day. Like it was really bad. Right?
As we said during our special 2-parter, we would not have gone back.
Yeah.
Like that's how uncompelling of a series it was. Yeah, we had to. We were obligated to our citizens.
God, it was long.
Well, now we're going to compare our average ratings. So, Mike, your average rating for the first 19 films we reviewed was a 2.5 out of 5. My average rating was a 2.7 out of 5.
It's incredible.
I have feelings about it, but I want to hear yours.
Well, I kind of want to hear your feelings first, actually, because I know the actual reason why it is, right? Like, I know that my reason is the true reason, and so I don't want to say it. So I want to hear what you think first.
I mean, my thoughts are that you guys can get bent. All of my friends who have accused me of being a snob over the years, that is a constant criticism when it comes to film that I have to deal with, that I have to contend with. My fucking friends Mike and his wife Caroline, who we thank for the podcast artwork every week. Oh, Mike, you didn't cry at Pixar's Soul. Oh, you didn't like this Oscar bait movie. Oh, whatever. Oh, you're such a snob. I'm not a snob. The ratings, the hard data reflects that I am not a snob. I'm more a man of the people than you ever are or will be. Okay? I appreciate movies that are good at being what they're trying to be. The worst sin that a film can commit for me personally is being boring. I hate a boring film. I feel like that is why I am more appreciative of these genre exercises that maybe aren't totally successful, but are keeping me somewhat engaged.
Yeah. I'm really happy for you that you got to say that. I know you've been waiting to say it for years. So you want to hear what I think?
Yeah.
So one, here's a thought about what you just said. This isn't what I'm going to say, so I don't want you to think that I think this is objectively true. Has it ever occurred to you that maybe you have this desire to kind of get your comeuppance against us on this disagreement we have about your nature as an art consumer by demonstrating your less snobbishness on the record? I don't know. It kind of actually calls your truthishness into question. I don't really think that, but just like a little bit of gap.
Yeah,
a little bit of a gap in your in your argument here.
I don't think so at all. And I think for you to even have the thought, it suggests that you are duplicitous by nature. You can go to my letterboxd, letterboxd.com/MikeBackAtYou and see hundreds, 1,000 ratings of films. And I think you will find that my ratings are consistent with other films that I've rated. So who am I here to impress?
So I agree. So I agree, right? And so that is my observation, right? And that's why I think that I am objectively correct in my assessment of why this is. To your point, right? I think that if we looked at your ratings distribution of films that you watched and then rated on Letterboxd, right? So like not ones you've rated, from memory, having watched them 5 years before you were on the platform, but like stuff that you actually rated immediately after you watched it. I bet you your average Letterboxd rating is like about this rating. And so I think that you are a consistent person, like my facetious accusation aside. And I think that you are probably, one, you watch a lot more normie bullshit than I do. Just in your life. Like I really don't watch that kind of stuff. And two, I think that you are watching the movies for the podcast very similarly to the way that you already watch movies, except for you're taking notes. And interestingly, I think taking the notes makes you maybe less attentive to the film, which is fascinating. But we're not here to...
We call it the Mike Back at you paradox.
We're going to do, just so you know, we're getting a little preview of what my 40th episode spectacular is going to be if we do one. It's just going to be... arguments about why we think each other are handling the podcast in certain ways. Kind of like it's like the psychological analysis version of like the literary analysis bent that I have while we're watching the movies. So I think you're doing exactly what you do when you always watch movies. And as I commented at the top of the episode, I am not, right? So there are like two things about this that are totally different from the way that I usually watch films when I sit down. One, I'm thinking that I'm going to have to be on a podcast. So I am much more attentive to detail, I think, than I usually am. And then the second thing is I don't watch a lot of normie bullshit. But in doing this podcast, I am watching a lot of normie bullshit, which is dragging down my average because, to Mike's comment, right? Like Mike's Letterboxd, if you go look at it, Mike's Letterboxd curve is like, it's a pretty normal curve. Like it's like you got a little bit of a peak like toward the middle, and then you have like very thin tails out, in the lower and upper extremities. My Letterboxd distribution, it peaks around like the high threes, I think. Yeah. Like it's pretty high. Like my peak, like could even be 4. Like my peak could be 4. And I am just generally a much more generous rater, I think, because on average or balance, I watch better things or things that I know based on critical reception or branding I am more likely to like. And I think I'm also just less discerning about the quality of films usually than I am in this podcast. So that's the reason why. So good for you for being consistent, I guess.
Well said. They don't call me Consistent Mike for nothing.
Nobody's ever called you that.
They could, though. They could. Now we're going to go into our next category, favorites and flops, starting with Mike. Your favorite movie that you've covered so far?
I'm going to get accused of recency bias here, but it was definitely Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. I know that just came out. I loved watching that movie so much.
Oh, and my God.
I knew when watching it that I'd never have seen it otherwise, right? So like talk about the two polls, right? So like the previous episode that I'd done the recap for was Joy, which was a movie that I had seen and would see, right? Like we joked about this a few weeks ago when it was announced. You got a new David O. Russell movie with Robert De Niro coming out during this podcast, and so we're going to see it, but I would have seen it. I would have gone to see it.
I would not have.
Right. I would have gone to see it whether we were doing this podcast or not. Never in my life would I have watched the like critically panned Kenneth Branagh Frankenstein movie from the 90s. And so like I really enjoyed watching it, and I really enjoyed that this podcast made me watch it, which I never would have done otherwise. And I just thought it was a delight.
My favorite movie that we covered so far has been The Untouchables, way back when. That was episode number 3. Do you even remember it? It was so far back.
Not well. I do remember it, though. It was a really nice movie.
It was such a blast. It was so much fun from start to finish. I had a great time like recapping it and just thinking about the movie that I had just watched, and I would love to rewatch it sometime soon.
Yeah. I don't know if I'm going to rewatch it sometime soon, but I'll definitely rewatch it sometime in my life. Maybe.
No, sometime after we finish this this podcast.
Like, I think at the end of the podcast, it could be fun to, like, over the successive 6 months, go back and watch, like, our 15 favorite movies from the podcast. Like, that would be really fun. But
that'd be a blast.
Yeah, I'm not watching it again during the podcast. Like, I have enough Robert De Niro movies to watch.
Yeah, too many to watch. So, okay, let's just go ahead now. What is your favorite episode of the podcast that we have released so far?
My favorite episode of the podcast, I think, is one that you hosted, actually. I think our best episode is the Rocky and Bullwinkle episode. I love that one. I think it's incredible. I think your recap is so good. I think that it is, like, I think we were really coming into, like, part of what I think we've come into over the past few weeks that, like, I think it really works really well is, like, me kind of coloring some of the detail in your recaps. And that was, I think, where that kind of came to, like, into the kind of primary fruition. But I think overall your recap was great and you loved the movie, which made it really fun to listen to you talk about it. And the episode's really funny. And I think we had a lot of really fun discussions during it. So if it's anyone like that, I guess. And for me, my favorite movie to lead a discussion on was Joy. I really enjoyed the discussion about Joy because I feel like it gave us a lot to talk about. You know, we were able to talk about Robert De Niro. We were able to talk about the other folks in the film. We were able to talk about the kind of like directorial, cinematographic, editing, like stuff about the film. But there was a lot to discuss also, like, historically and from, like, a literary context. And it was just like, when I listened to that one, I'm like, we're doing good. You know, this is a nice podcast. This is a good discussion podcast. I enjoy listening to it. What about you?
I agree with you. I think that our last few, I think those two especially, have been really probably our best just in terms of overall quality. And I think that what you described, that dynamic where you're kind of coloring in my recap, filling in more details, I think it's really nice dynamic that we've fallen into, and it took some time to reach that. But I will say, I think my actual favorite episode, one that I have a real soft spot for that I don't necessarily think is one of our best, is our episode on Savage Salvation with our first really guest, my cousin Ashley. Yeah. I mean, the problem there is, she was a great guest. I mean, she wasn't the problem. The problem was that it was our 5th episode. We were still very much trying to find our footing and really get a feel for the flow of the podcast. And we could have done a better job of managing the flow, managing the guests. It was a little unwieldy, but I just had so much fun, like the chaos of it, of bringing a third person into this dynamic that we had just recently started establishing. And I thought she had great insight. I thought the back and forth was really fun. The back and forth was also fun with Caroline in our episode about Frankenstein, but that was our second. You never forget your first. So that is why I'm choosing to highlight the episode about Savage Salvation. But I think those are all great picks, and I'm really excited to see how we evolve in future episodes. So next, what is your least favorite movie that we've covered so far in the podcast? And you know what? If you also want to say your least favorite episode, be my guest.
No, I don't have a least favorite episode. I feel like there's a more, like, kind of ambient consistency to the lows for me. And while I really love the ones I mentioned, there's none that I, like, really hate, right? Like, I don't know. The bad ones are just, like, they're kind of bad.
The only one that I genuinely dislike is our first episode, Greetings, and that is purely because my microphone was blown out.
Yeah, you care about
and I
that
just
so
feel
much more than
so I care about it, and I feel so embarrassed when I hear it. I was so angry when I was editing that entire episode. But you're trying to stick to a schedule, so it is what it is. It's one of our most popular episodes.
Yep.
What's your favorite movie or least favorite movie?
It's hard to pick between my two least favorite movies, but I think it would have to be either Greetings or The Gang That Couldn't Shoot Straight. There are worse movies that we've watched for sure, but these I just found so interminably boring. Like both of them. I did not enjoy these films, and I actually think, it's kind of funny to think about Greetings, actually. Like, it could be a funny, like, special event episode to do would be to go back and redo one of the first movies we did and, like, see how much better it is. It would be fun to do Greetings again.
That could be a good one to redo.
Because ironically, in spite of how much I hated The Gang That Couldn't Shoot Straight, I think that is one of our really strong episodes as well. That one is quite good.
I agree.
But I hated that movie so much. Like, it's so fucking boring. It's not that long, but it feels so long. And, like, Greetings is a slog. Like, it's like a comedy that, like, doesn't make you laugh at all. And, like, those movies both suck. So I did not enjoy either of those.
Right. I think a lot of the films that we have watched, even if our ratings have been lukewarm, I think are absolutely worth watching. I would really recommend the citizens of the Niro Nation go out and watch The Score or whatever. But the two that I thought of for my least favorite were The Gang That Couldn't Shoot Straight and Savage Salvation. The Gang That Couldn't Shoot Straight, because like you said, it is just so boring. It's so absolutely boring from start to finish. And Savage Salvation is barely a movie. There's nothing there. There's no artistic value. De Niro does essentially nothing, and it's just not worth your time. And so thank God we had Ashley there and turned it into a very special episode, because I was resentful that we had to watch that sort of geezer teaser slop for the podcast.
Yes, I agree. It's a really horrible movie, but I still think I enjoyed it more than Greetings or The Gang That Couldn't Shoot Straight, honestly.
All right. Which film that we've watched so far in the first 19 episodes was your biggest surprise in a good or bad way?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm so curious what you'll say for this. I think mine is 0 Day. Not because I expected it to be good, but because I can't believe how bad it is. It's really funny. So think about so let's compare two old guard, absolutely stratospheric, Hollywood leading men, kind of from similar eras, really, and their forays into television, right? So you got Robert De Niro, right? His first TV show, maybe the only one he'll ever do, is 0 Day. Jesus Christ, man, what a nightmare. And then think about, on the other hand, Harrison Ford, right? Harrison Ford is one of the biggest movie stars of all time. He never did a TV show. And then when he does, it's Shrinking, and it's you like Shrinking, you don't like Shrinking, whether it is or is not your kind of thing. But it's a good, popular, beloved, modern 30-minute comedy. And it's that's discernment, right? He was I'm going to do this new medium. And he had the discernment to know I'm going to do a show that's good. This is going to help to bolster my reputation. I just wouldn't have expected such a prominent, beloved actor to do his first foray into a new medium and have it be a thing in that medium that is just so bad. I just thought it would be normal bad Netflix bullshit. 0 Day it surprised me by how bad it was. What about you?
Man, that is really interesting. I'm going to go in a more positive direction. I think the biggest surprise for me has been The Score. That's what I landed on. Yep. And the reason is it was invigorating to watch and discuss that film. I'd never heard of it before. And De Niro, his career, he has been in some of the greatest films ever, of course, that everyone has seen. He's also been in some real trash. Everyone knows this about his late career. But it was so surprising to me in a reassuring kind of way to see that, in his 100+ long filmography, there are just going to be these little diamonds in the rough, these little golden nuggets that are genuinely good films. They're straightforward. They're to the point. They accomplish what they set out to, and we just get to watch those. These films that no one else out there is thinking about, that history doesn't remember. No one has a poster of The Score up in their rumpus room.
I might now.
You might, right?
This podcast,
you watched it. It was a lot of fun. It didn't overstay its welcome. And now I'm just excited thinking, well, how many more of those mid-career films are we going to get that are just, hey, turns out this is a really fun time and we just got to watch it for this dumb idea that we had at the end of last year. So that's the biggest surprise for me.
That is really nice. I really like that one. And I did love The Score. There's a lot of very good stuff about that film.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
So the last favorite and flop question that we have, what do you think was the best De Niro performance that we've seen so far?
Oh, I really struggle with this one. I feel like there are so many. Here's the thing, right? We dump on most of these movies, right? Because most of them are not very good. But I feel really, really good about doing a Robert De Niro podcast. Robert De Niro is awesome. Even in the worst trash that we've had to watch for this, he's at worst good. And in most of the trash, he like kind of elevates it almost in his way, by his presence. So that's something that I feel. That being said, I think my answer to the question is like pretty boring, I guess. I think it would have to be Meet the Parents. You have remarked on this before, and we haven't seen any of like the like legendary De Niro dramatic performances yet. He's incredibly funny. Like he is a great comic actor. And Meet the Parents is a legendary De Niro comedic performance. And like, God, he's so good. Like the face acting, like I think like something I reflect on, just like loving so much that we watched during the podcast and got to talk about was like the scene where he reads the poem about his mom. Is so funny. Like just like the restraint of like the cadence of his delivery and like the way he like moves his face while he's doing it is like, I mean, that is like one of the best who's ever done it at the absolute top of his game. And like, God, Jack Burns is such a funny character. Like, yeah, so I think that's mine, but it's not easy. They're all good performances.
It's not an easy question. I love everything you just said because my answer, very difficult, took me a long time to arrive at, is also his performance as Jack Burns in Meet the Parents.
Yeah, we didn't talk about this. So our listeners know.
This is fresh.
2 out of 2 mics agree, right?
Yeah, it's him playing against type. And not only is he successful, but he makes the movie. He elevates this comedy film. You can bring De Niro in a small part into some sort of well-constructed dramatic film. And sure, he'll give you a great performance. It's what he does. He has an intensity to him, a weight to his performances. But for him to play the straight man, essentially, this neurotic patriarch with all these weird character quirks. And not only does he commit, but he makes the movie what it is.
You want to know what it honestly makes me really excited for? Is the subsequent 2 movies, which I've never seen and would never have any reason to see. And I'm excited to see if Jack Burns continues being really funny.
Oh, yeah, the rest of the trilogy?
Yeah, yep. Oh, you didn't know what I was talking about. Yeah, yep.
No, I didn't know what you were talking
I loved
about.
the character of Jack Burns.
I forgot they made
so
sequels.
Much. And I really hope, like, I know they're going to be bad, but I hope Jack is still at least really funny. Like, I hope we at least have that to enjoy in the subsequent
I think that's really all we can hope for, thinking
yeah,
about these sequels to Meet the Parents.
It's like we love this performance and we're going to get more of it for better or worse, right? So, like, at least that's something to look forward to. That'll be fun.
Now I have 3 hypotheticals for us, Mike. Here's the first one for you. Which De Niro character would you like to get a drink with?
This was the easiest one for me to answer. This was the easiest question for me to answer on the entire thing. I mean, Nick Wells from The Score.
Really?
Nick Wells from The Score is the coolest character we have seen depicted on film in this entire podcast. Like, he runs that jazz club. Could you imagine just like getting like a glass of bourbon with that guy, getting to talk to him for like an hour and 15 minutes, if he would like be open with you at all, like talk about his life, and like it would just be like, it would be a very fun like bar hang for an hour or 2, I think.
Okay, that is actually pretty easy because I also ultimately landed on Nick Wells from The Score, but and for the reasons you said, but my runner up was John Rubin from Greetings. His very first film role from 1968. And I really thought it depends on what kind of night. Yeah, the perv. Well, but you think about the character as a whole. Yeah. I think he's like a fun guy in his mid-20s who just likes dicking around. He's kind of a pervert. He's into film. And I'm like, okay, why not? Let's hang out. Let's grab a drink at some dive. I think we'd have a fun time like shooting pool and just like talking about film. And he might say some weird pervert things about spying on people. And I'd be like, whoa, John, you got to dial it back, buddy. What are you doing? I know it's the 60s, but still. But Nick would also be fantastic, but it would just be a lower key kind of night. You'd be hanging out at a jazz club somewhere, sitting at the bar, asking about his philosophy. But I could see having a great time with either one of those characters.
Yeah. So I have another pick then. I want to pick one that's more raucous then. I would also love to get a drink with the Dirty Grandpa.
Are you kidding me?
Like, if you're talking about having like a really raucous night, like, you can just let me talk, right? Like, we can talk over each other.
You could talk. I wasn't stopping you from
when
talking.
I talk, this is another comment on the way that we record together. Whenever I talk, I am just trying to interject into the conversation like you would in a conversation when you and me talk to each other. We interject while each other is talking. But like every time I do, you back away and you're like, oh, I better stop talking. Like as though I'm like interrupting.
Well, I thought you were going to make a point.
No, I'm just saying stuff. Like I'm like egging you on.
Oh my God. Well, the 20th episode of Our Hero De Niro is going to be our last. It was great producing this for you, ladies and gentlemen. No, I was just saying that the dirty grandpa I specifically didn't choose him because in the film we see him drug his own grandchild. So like, what would he do to you?
You just have a wild night.
You have a wild night.
Yeah.
Do you want to be like Zac Efron, totally nude except for like some plushie in front of your crotch, dancing in a college party?
Because like if you're Zac Efron, right, there's like nothing embarrassing about being naked. I mean,
Sure.
like, the only thing about it that's
you
bad
get a bod like that.
Right, is
2016
that
Zac
around.
Efron.
It's like, man, if you're Zac Efron, like you walk around naked all the time in any context where it's not gonna get you indicted for a sex crime. But like, for me, I don't want people to see me naked. That's kind of the way that I feel about it. So that would be bad.
Yeah. But you know what? He probably wouldn't know you well enough to feel comfortable drugging you, so you probably could have a good time with him. So I think he actually might be a good pick.
Yep.
All right, our final hypothetical here. Which De Niro character would make the best podcast co-host? So imagine a hypothetical in which I am dead and you need to replace me with one of the characters that we've seen in these 19 films. Who's going to be your pick for podcast co-host?
So I have two picks here again. Sorry, it's just hard to pick just one, especially for this question. So I think my first one is, and this one's a little bit more serious. I would really love to host a podcast with the creation from Frankenstein, DeMonster, as you call him.
DeMonster, yeah.
I just feel like he
pick.
has such an interesting perspective on life. Like it's like if you're trying to create a pastiche of perspectives, like in the context of doing analysis, who could possibly have a more different perspective from me than a hideous monster who's only been alive for 3 months? Who like in this context, I would be the only person who liked him. Like
right.
Like that's
you're a hideous monster who's been alive for 36 years.
Right. Very funny. It's 37 actually.
Yeah, thanks. You don't look a day over 36, man.
So that's my kind of serious answer, I think. And my joke answer is, I think that given how used I am to recording this podcast with you, my like type A neurotic weirdo podcast co-host, I think Jack Burns could slip in real easy. Like I think that he could assume your role very easily, and I think I'm already primed to work with him. So that's my less serious answer.
Oh God. Oh, that's really something. I thought about Jack Burns as a potential option, but ultimately I thought about it and I was like, okay, I have to do 90 more episodes of this podcast. Who would I enjoy doing it with the most? And who I landed on ultimately was Dr. Wally from Marvin's Room.
Yeah, that was my number 3, probably. Just because he seems so easy.
He just seems like such a fun, easygoing guy. He's obviously smart. He's a doctor. He wears those wacky ties. I think it'd be a lot of fun to just, yeah, sure. I'll spend the next 90 weeks talking about films with this guy. Why the hell not? We'll go cycling afterwards.
He reminds you of me. He's kind of like the me version of you to Jack Burns. Did I say those ratios right?
I see a lot more of DeMonster in you, really.
Interesting.
Just in terms of physical appearance, smell, that sort of thing.
I guess, widely misunderstood in his time, but, fundamentally decent, like a misunderstood genius. Sure.
All right, before we get into our last couple of sections, I want to just talk a bit about our behind the scenes for the podcast, how the sausage is made, how it's been for us over the preceding 19 weeks. Mike, are there any moments that stand out to you, funny, frustrating, or otherwise, about recording these first 19 episodes of the pod?
Yeah, I mean, just, behind the scenes, I guess the only thing that I've really found frustrating is just your in the moment criticism of me. We just talked about it a few minutes ago. But otherwise, in general, I think that I've really found the process quite enjoyable. Mike does all the edits, right? In case we haven't said that on the air before. And I think you do a really nice job with the editing, and I really appreciate that you're doing it all and that you're doing such a nice job. And I think that with the exception of, you're criticizing me in the moment, and from the other direction, my doing the things that make you criticize me in the moment, I think we're having a reasonably harmonious time doing this project together. I don't know. I'm really having a great time. I don't know that I would share anything that I find particularly frustrating.
No, I feel the same. I feel like those frustrating moments that you describe where I criticize you in the heat of the recap, I forget about those almost immediately afterwards. I just, we're looking at each other during recording and I see you move the microphone around or whatever, and it drives me fucking insane. But for a little behind the scenes perspective, just on how we actually produce the podcast. So obviously we watched the film separately for the most part.
Usually,
we watched a couple in person together. Yeah.
We watched
which is always nice when we do.
Salvation and
yeah.
Have we watched any others in person? Well, we saw the Alto Nights together in the movie theater.
Yeah.
So we watched
and we saw Meet the Parents together at my place.
Yeah, and we watched Meet the Parents together at your place. So those are the three, I guess, that we've watched together. But yes.
So we watch the film, we take notes or don't take notes, then we record these episodes, which is a whole fun thing in itself. And then afterwards, I do the editing on my iPad. So I do feel like, one, we've both become better as recappers, but I also feel like I've improved my editing game. And honestly, I consider myself a better editor than recapper. I think that the recaps you provide when you don't let them run super long are really good, very insightful. I think the dynamic that Andrew touched upon with his listener mail really hit the nail on the head. That we talked about this at the very beginning of the podcast, kind of what we envisioned our hero De Niro being. And you said you wanted to be like this historical tome, this source of discussion and information about his entire filmography that doesn't exist elsewhere. And I really see it as an excuse to riff with my friend, you know? And I think that that's the natural day. We managed to have both quite successfully for the most part. I think that's been improving over time as we kind of naturally settle into these roles. And so I actually do appreciate it when you're recapping and you're doing a good job and I'm just able to come in over the top with a riff or whatever, some dumb joke I've thought of. And when I'm recapping, I'm trying, I think you're right. Sometimes it is tough when you're taking notes and I'm trying to make sure I'm not missing anything. Sometimes I still miss things anyways, but I appreciate when I'm recapping and miss something and you're able to come in over the top with that insightful analysis. So I feel like it works really well in both directions. And I'm excited to see more of that dynamic in the future.
90 more, baby.
Oh my God. Are there any movies that you've reevaluated after recording?
Yeah, I was thinking about this actually, because we've talked about it several times in this episode. And so there's kind of two that I think I want to reevaluate. So one is on the score. I feel like I could go soft 4 in memory, I wonder how I'd feel if I did watch it again. But when I think about that film, and I thought about it a lot while I was putting together my thoughts for this episode, it's all really positive, I really like that film. And there's some stuff about the ways the characters behave at the ending that doesn't make a ton of sense to me, that does diminish it a little bit in my eyes. But I still think it's a really, really good movie. I really enjoyed it. And then the other one in the other direction for me is, I don't know what we were thinking when we both gave 0 Day 2.5. Like, I feel like for me, it was like motivated reasoning. Like, it was like I just wanted to maybe not be like so cruel to this like exciting miniseries TV project that De Niro was doing. But like, it hasn't benefited from time and reflection, So I could similarly revise 0 Day down to a 2. What about you?
That's great. I agree with you about the score. I think it was such a fun movie. I could see myself rating that a 4 out of 5, possibly, if I ever rewatch it. I didn't think about 0 Day, but that's because it made so little of an impression upon me. But you're right. I think we gave it 2.5 stars because it presents itself as something serious and weighty and worthwhile, even though ultimately it's not. And if I thought about it more, I would probably like it less, but I just haven't thought about it at all. Which again, that's why I got the 2.5
you want from a work of fiction. The more you think about it, the less good it seems.
This isn't too intense. It's not much of a criticism. I think I might have been overzealous in my 3-star rating for The Adventures of Rocky and Bullwinkle. I just had so much fun watching it, talking about it. I gave it that 3 because I was riding high, but it's probably a 2.5 out of 5 at best. It's not a good movie necessarily. I just happened to enjoy its tone and performances.
You're hurting me. I really liked that you gave it such a high score. It made me happy.
I'm just, listen, we'll have to rewatch our most popular episodes. We rewatch those films and have those discussions. All right, and our final question here in the behind the scenes segment, Mike, which movie was hardest to talk about and why?
For me, it was Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. I both found the first half of the movie bafflingly confusing with the lack of aging, makeup / special effects, and the strange way the narrative was structured. And I also was working from Caroline's terrible stream of consciousness notes, which could be a pretty funny. It could be like a funny thing for us to like post. If we ever did like a Patreon or something, just like what Caroline's notes were for Frankenstein. So yeah, I think that was the one. If I try to push for something that wasn't so recent, just so I can avoid accusations of recency bias, I really think it was the earliest ones. I just didn't really know. I didn't really know how to do it yet. You know what I mean? Like if you go back and look at like my notes for Ezra, for example, like I wrote like 2,000 words of notes. Like I wrote so much. I didn't know like what kinds of notes to take yet and like, etc. So I definitely struggled with some of the earlier ones.
Yeah, I think the one that comes to mind for me is Greetings, both because it was our first episode and because structurally, plot-wise, it's so aimless. It's really a series of vignettes, and that was difficult. You expect a movie adhering to that classic 3-act structure, and we didn't get that with Greetings, but we just had to talk about it for an hour and a half or however long we were talking about it. And so I thought that was very difficult. Okay, now it's time to move into our final segment, Listener Mail. This podcast wouldn't be what it is without the loyal citizens of the Niro Nation writing in whenever they choose to, not that frequently, but I have a handful of fantastic letters from loyal citizens. All right, our first letter comes from friend of the pod, Chase. Chase is notable for being our first confirmed follow on Letterboxd from the podcast, and he writes in, Mike, I'm just going to say up top for this letter, I think if you have any thoughts, I think we should just buzz in as I'm reading the letter, okay? Yep. Sound good?
Sounds good.
Fantastic. Chase writes, greetings to Mike, and Niro Nation. I've been meaning to write into the show ever since I discovered your courageous venture into Bobby's entire filmography starting all the way back in January, but enjoying the whole ride since. But it was with the adventures of Rocky and Bullwinkle finally getting coverage that I suddenly felt compelled to jump to the keypad. This was my first ever introduction to Robert De Niro as an actor, watching it on VHS when I was barely 2 to 3 years old, and I'm pretty certain I might have seen Shark Tale when it came out in the theater around the same time, but my memory of it firsthand is hazy.
Yeah, Mike's buzzing in.
I'm buzzing in. That is unbelievable to me. I mean, half the reason I was excited to recap The Adventures of Rocky and Bullwinkle is because friend of the pod, Zoe, who we do know in real life, she kept saying that the only 2 movies she was interested in us discussing are The Adventures of Rocky and Bullwinkle and Shark Tale, because those are the 2 that she grew up with as a Gen Zer or whatever the hell that generation of people is that you 2 belong to. And so it's just so fascinating to me, the idea of someone's first exposure to Robert De Niro being one of those 2 films. Because at least for us, I just feel like through cultural osmosis, we've absorbed so many of his key performances and lines, You Talking to Me, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, you got that one, it's fascinating as well, so.
Yes, that's true. You didn't catch that reference. It was right over your head.
I'd seen Taxi Driver.
I just think that's so fascinating. Let's get back into the letter.
But I do want, Chase and our listeners to know that as you were reading the letter, my smile was growing because I think I was feeling the same thing Mike is feeling, which is just like, it's just fascinating to imagine that being your first exposure to Robert De Niro, I guess. And obviously obviously you've grown up to be like an appreciator of like his full film catalog. But like, yeah, for me, it's like when I think of Robert De Niro, I think of like Goodfellas. That's the performance that I think of as like the Robert De Niro performance that I like associate with him from a movie I saw when I was like in high school, and like it's just such a different vibe than those 2 films. That's awesome. It's really cool.
Chase writes, For a certain demographic of Gen Z film devotees and moviegoers, both Rocky and Bullwinkle and Shark Tale were the introduction to Robert De Niro and possibly the earliest time we encountered him acting and not referenced through other media. Thinking of Robin Williams as a genie in Aladdin parodying the "You Talking to Me" bit from Taxi Driver. There might have been the Sesame Street guest skit De Niro did with Elmo explaining acting.
I completely forgot about that. That's so funny. That'll be funny to link in the show notes.
But other than that, this was our true gateway into the actor's work. I mainly wanted to bring a listener's perspective into this marginal but nevertheless interesting outing from De Niro during an interesting time in Hollywood, reappropriating older kids' media from previous generations into lucratively produced legacy IP films. P.S. Optional if you're so inclined to read this on air, which I am. I confess to watching some fiction movies at 1.5 or 2x speed if it's really lethargically bad or so mediocre it can only be redeemed through slapstick comedy levels of speed. I'm buzzing in again. That's wild, man. That is wild. I'm worried.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned. I don't know about that.
A little concerned.
I mean, however you want to live your life, right? But I'm not sure.
Right.
Yep. Doesn't it sound weird?
I don't know. You have to ask Chase.
Yeah, I mean, I'm
I guess
asking.
You are asking Chase.
Yeah, I'm not asking you. I mean, I'm asking Chase. Like, I feel like I understand, right? Listen, better after the first 19 episodes of this podcast than I think I ever had in my life beforehand. I understand the desire to find ways to be economical with your time when you're watching something that maybe is overstaying its welcome a little bit. Had that experience a lot over the past few months, but I feel like it would make Robert De Niro's voice sound so high and squeaky like the Chipmunks. You know, like I don't
think it does that, man.
I kind of want to try it. I kind of want to try watching some fiction at 2x.
I don't watch fiction at increased speeds, but I do listen to podcasts at 1.5 times speed.
Yeah.
And you don't sound higher pitched.
No, it doesn't change the pitch of your voice. You can tell I've literally never
it's just
done
faster.
It. I have never watched or listened to anything at an increased speed at any point in my life.
Oh, I feel like I cracked the code listening to podcasts faster.
Yeah.
Chase finishes by saying, for example, there was a micro-budget indie shot-for-shot remake of Nosferatu with Doug Jones, previously referenced on the podcast, that I could only bring myself to complete at 1.5 times speed, and it made the viewing experience much better because of how unintentionally hilarious the movie already was at regular speed.
It's a pretty funny idea. I do kind of like that.
All it was missing was a bumbling young Cary Grant, and it would have been perfection.
Was Doug Jones one of the FBI agents from Rocky and Bullwinkle? Was that who that was?
Yes, and he played Saru in Star Trek Discovery. Yep. Chase, thank you so much for the thoughtful, insightful letter. I really appreciate it. It was great to read. I'm excited that Mike's first reaction to it was during this podcast recording. And, I hope you continue to listen to the pod. And I wish that every listener could be so engaged.
I agree
with us.
Love the letter.
I like that you're on board for the mission, Yeah,
I'm so excited to sit down and watch something at 2x speed tonight.
Oh, Jesus.
Yep.
I don't know, man. I don't know if I can do that.
It's a pretty funny idea.
It is. Our second letter comes from friend of the pod, Andrew, who writes about our Melvin's Room episode. Andrew writes, I enjoyed the episode, although I do miss the longer ones. I always find it interesting in the recaps how you both omit or sometimes forget details, even down to people's names. Is this a function of how interested you are in the movie? Or are those details just less important than the themes and emotional impact?
I have so much to say. Yeah, Andrew, you've been one of my best friends in Gainesville for a really long time now, and you forget all kinds of shit. So I don't appreciate this accusation. I don't know what it's a function of, really. I feel like it's usually Mike who forgets the characters' names, right? I don't know. Is that proportional between the two of us? I don't know. I'm curious.
You do forget important details.
Oh,
like
sure.
I don't know if it's forgetting or just not noticing important plot points, but Frankenstein was a great example. You thought at the end that they were in the same location or something.
Understand the movie.
Yeah.
I tried.
Yeah, Andrew nailed it for me. When I forget things, it is because those details are less important to me than how the film is making me feel and the emotional impact, those sorts of things. Again, it goes back to the worst thing that a film can do for me is be boring. And so, yeah, I lose some of those specific details, but I still want to discuss the film overall, its impact, its how it made me feel. But I think that is a great question. That's another great letter, Andrew. Thank you for writing in.
Thank you, Andrew.
This next letter comes from not only friend of the podcast, Caroline, guest of the podcast, Caroline, and podcast artwork designer, Caroline. She wears many hats in this whole production.
Let's let her edit an episode.
Oh my God. Yeah, that'd be great. Just take some of the load off. Caroline wrote in after our Rocky and Bullwinkle episode and wrote, "Dear dudes, I just listened to your Rocky and Bullwinkle episode and was inspired to design some swag for you. I hope you agree that these are the tenets of hashtag De Niro Core for which every citizen of the Niro Nation ought to strive." And she made a parody of those lawn signs that we joked about that have the dumb "in this house we believe" blah 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 bullshit. And so she wrote, making one for the podcast. She wrote,
so I don't know about this. She's kept this from me.
On the sign, Caroline writes, "In this house, we believe in pop filters, getting into it later on, taking our own notes, live show rules, saving it for the pod, Lion Car Wash ASMR, Mike and Mike no relation, and finally, our hero De Niro." I think that's fantastic. I love it.
It's really good.
Yeah.
When we first made the joke, I thought it would be like references to Robert De Niro, but it's references to the podcast.
That's what I also thought.
Right.
Yes.
Nobody walking by the house is going to
direction.
understand what any of these things mean. Like, I don't think I have any neighbors who are listening to our hero De Niro.
That's a shame. Got to get them on it.
That's true. I should tell them.
Caroline, thank you so much for the letter. Thank you even more for the artwork. It's fantastic.
Yes, agreed. Love it. It's very funny.
If anyone else wants to submit artwork to the podcast, feel free to email it to our hero deniro@gmail.com, and we might just feature it in a future episode in the episode description. All right, this next letter is again from friend of the pod, Andrew, writing in response to our Rocky and Bullwinkle episode. Andrew writes, "I want it to be noted on air that David Puddy is Patrick Warburton's best character. I haven't seen the Rocky and Bullwinkle movie, but I was never a fan of the cartoon, even as a kid. I think Space Jam still holds up, but you have to view it through the lens of the child that movie is made for. A 10-year-old Michael Jordan fan. Maybe Mike back at you enjoyed it more because he had the proper lens on." This is a follow-up to my previous question, but we've seen memeable movies like the Minecraft movie and the anniversary release of Episode 3 be wildly successful. I think these are great examples of ostensibly low-quality movies that have mass appeal for their generic enjoyability. Is this what it will take to bring people back to the theaters?
That was Andrew talking, right?
Yes.
It's an interesting thought. Yeah, so it makes me think about something that I read on Facebook earlier today. I was on Facebook earlier today, and I think, although I didn't look it up to make sure that I was understanding the exact date correctly, but I think that Mad Max Fury Road came out 10 years ago today, the day that we are recording this podcast. And so I was looking at my Facebook newsfeed earlier today, and AV Club wrote a very clickbaity article that I broadly agreed with. I think the headline was just meant to be clickbait. That was Mad Max Fury Road is the best action movie ever made. And in the comments, somebody wrote, "We could fix the movie theater solvency problem by just releasing Mad Max in theaters 2 or 3 times a year." And it's just funny to hear that thought expressed twice in one day. But it couldn't be bad, right? I think that you probably couldn't do it 2 or 3 times a year, but it's not going to be worse than this crap they put out that nobody goes and sees. If you put out some beloved cult classic once a year, every year, for a couple day special engagement, you could put any Star Wars movie in any movie theater for 3 or 4 days, and the showtimes would sell out, right? And after a few years of doing it, it would become less popular, but it's not a terrible idea. I like the suggestion. What do you think, Mike?
I think Andrew's question is good. I think your response is good. But what I'm thinking about now are Marvel movies. Those are designed by committee to be as safe and non-threatening as possible and appeal to as many people as possible. But they've been floundering lately. I guess Thunderbolts has received a pretty positive reception, but in general, who's cared about anything that's come out since Avengers Endgame? So I don't think that's the case. I don't think the solution is to try to build in memeable moments into your script or whatever you're filming. I don't know. I think that those are much rarer than we give them credit for. And in general, I think we should just try to be reducing these budgets that have ballooned out of control. All these $150, $200 million movies that still look ugly and fake. Think about Netflix movies. Think about The Electric State starring Chris Pratt and Millie Bobby Brown on Netflix, and just how drab and created by committee on an assembly line it looks. It's depressing. No, I didn't. I'll never watch that.
I'll never watch that.
Thank God we're not doing the Pratt Pals, because I'd fucking, oh my God.
The Pratt Pals would be an incredible podcast. That would be an incredibly funny thing to do next.
It would be really funny. I don't care for his movies that much.
I kind of unironically love Chris Pratt, honestly.
It's crazy that you say that, but you haven't seen what I am sure is his best performance, which is him as Star-Lord in Guardians of the Galaxy.
It's pretty funny, isn't it?
It's why we were just talking. There's an example of a Marvel movie that was actually good. I don't know. It's a complicated question, and I appreciate your writing in with that, Andrew.
Yeah, I just want to say that I think I answered more when I was thinking about Star Wars Episode 3. No, yeah. I think that if you're using Minecraft as part of this hypothesis, like, no, absolutely not. You cannot engineer that. It won't work. What I was saying was more like the novelty of re-releasing a beloved film or a cult classic guarantees box office returns, right? Like, it's like a very safe investment. If they put, Uncut Gems in theaters for a couple days this year, like, the showtimes are going to sell out. It's guaranteed revenue.
I'd go.
Like, are you kidding me? I'd go twice this year if they put it in IMAX twice this year. Like, you have those people, right, for those films. But no, I don't think you can engineer the Minecraft movie. Like, that was just lightning in a bottle. What are you gonna do?
Yeah, our last real letter, I'll explain why in a little bit, comes from friend of the pod, Philip. This is actually disconnected from any of the movies that we've recapped, and I love that.
It'd be really funny if it just wasn't even about the podcast. It's just like the text he sends us in our group chat, but he just like wrote it as an email so we'd read it on air.
I don't care at all. If there is a question, it does not have to be about the movie. It doesn't have to be about the podcast. Ask us anything you want and we will address it on air.
I agree. Anything.
Philip writes anything. Philip writes, De Niro is regularly ranked as one of the greatest actors of all time. This is presumably based on performances in his well-known films. What this podcast is teaching me is he appeared in many shit films, a fact that many outside of De Niro Nation may be ignorant of. Should this affect his ranking negatively? What do you think, Mike?
I don't think so at all. No. I think that, so there's basically two ways to think about this, right? So one way is, I think the way that Daniel Day-Lewis thinks about his career, right? I mean, we're talking about a guy who's like, he retired, right? He was only in like 6 movies. And Daniel Day-Lewis is obviously one of the greatest actors of all time. But I think that he overweights the importance of consistency and perfection when he thinks about what his reputation is going to be. And I'm sure it does generate some marginal benefit, like maybe 10 or 20% over somebody like De Niro, who has a less focused set of performances in his filmography. But nobody remembers Savage Salvation, so like it doesn't really matter. Like you think about Goodfellas, you don't think about, Marvin's Room. So no, I don't think so. It is a really interesting question, though. It's a fun thing to think about. And there clearly are like more kind of like method actor type folks like Daniel Day-Lewis, like people like Jeremy Strong, who are just like freaks about like their craft, who like really care about that kind of thing. But in the kind of longer like arc of like critical history, I don't think it will matter when we think about like who the GOATs were in any given time. What do you think, Mike?
No, I agree completely with you. I think it's a great question from Philip, so I do thank you for sending that in. But no, I don't think a person's legacy is determined by their entire body of work, right? He's a part of some of the greatest films of all time in the entire 120 plus year history of cinema as an art form. That's who gives a shit? It's the same as Bruce Willis or anyone else who has, who ended up working in those sorts of cheap, low budget, straight to VOD kind of pictures, John Cusack, etc. Who cares? The people who are actually watching them are the type of people who would watch those films. So I don't think their perception is all that negatively affected. They're probably like, oh great, there's something on the Roku that stars Robert De Niro. That'll kill an hour and a half while I second screen and like browse TikTok. And those of us who do care more about the art form, the kinds of weirdos who would start a Robert De Niro rewatch podcast, we wouldn't watch those on our own. We wouldn't watch a Savage Salvation or a Godsend or whatever. All those kind of fade into the ether, and you're left with the cream of the crop, the best of the best.
Yeah, maybe Philip, I would think about like, you think about music, right? Because I think that you're really more of a music person than a film person. Like think about like somebody like Paul Simon, right? Like one of the greatest songwriters of all time. You think about Graceland, right? Like when you think about Paul Simon, you don't think about the fact that he hasn't written a good song since 1998. I've listened to everything that Paul Simon has ever recorded,
Oh my
and
God.
like he really drops off after a certain point, you know. But like that doesn't diminish the impact of like the incredible songs that he wrote and recorded in the 70s, 80s, and early to mid 90s. Like he is one of the greatest recording artists of all time. I think De Niro's kind of in the same camp as somebody like Paul Simon.
Yeah, I think that's well said. Our last letter, I'm actually not going to read on air. I'm going to issue a warning to the citizens of De Niro Nation. This letter comes from friend of the pod, Zoe, who emailed us at 11:15 p.m. last night with a quote from the movie Shark Tale. I'm not going to read it. I had to Google it to know what she was even saying. But Zoe, I think you owe us a real letter. It can be an insightful question or comment, maybe some fan artwork. I know you just got an iPad recently, but I'm not going to dignify that sort of joke email by actually reading it on air. You can't make us do that. So be on your best behavior, citizens of De Niro Nation.
I agree. And I would also really like to emphasize the veracity of the commitment that Mike and I have made here. You can write us about anything, you know, and you know, be judicious, because there's got to be something that we'll just refuse to talk about. But like, I don't know. On my Twitch channel, which far fewer people ever watched than listen to this podcast, I had set up a channel point reward scheme, and because I love to talk about myself and my opinions and ask and answer any question anybody asks me, my one channel point redemption reward was ask me anything. And you know, you can ask me and Mike anything by writing us an email, and you know, as long as it isn't too racy for this podcast, which I think is reasonably racy, we'll talk about it on air. I think that's fun. I think it's a fun challenge to you, De Niro Nation.
I agree. You know, we're open books for the most part.
Yeah.
All right, I've had a lot of fun here during our 20th episode spectacular. I've been looking forward to this for weeks, the opportunity to just take a step back from the constant watching and recapping of films and just play around with the format a bit. So I want to reach out to you, citizens of De Niro Nation. Let us know what you thought about this episode, and do you think we should do this sort of thing more often? I was thinking that maybe for our 30th episode, we would do a mailbag episode. You know, send the letters in, send the questions, send the comments. Maybe we'll just do something special then. And Mike will host our next spectacular episode, which will be our 40th.
We're just going to get a bunch of questions about like politics for the mailbag or something. now people know they can write in anything
Censor.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You know what I was thinking about earlier today? Sorry, just really quick thinking about politics. You remember freedom fries?
Oh, yeah. Post 9/11, baby.
Yep. So just as a quick aside, you can look this up on Wikipedia. I looked earlier today. It has a long Wikipedia article. In 2003, as like a spat of post 9/11 jingoism, a few Republican Congress members tried to rebrand French fries as freedom fries to make them more American in nature rather than paying homage to the French. It's very funny. Truly, everything old is new again, right?
Yeah, I might eat some freedom fries tonight.
You and me both, sister.
So email your feedback to us, questions, comments, thoughts on format. We value your feedback at ourherodeniro@gmail.com. Follow us on Letterboxd if you're not. I'm Mike back at you. He's Mike the Fab. Thanks to Caroline for our podcast artwork and for the letter this week. We'll be back with you next week with a regular episode about the 2013 film Killing Season. And while you're out there, don't forget to rate us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, because we could really use it.
We really could. And, about Killing Season. So excited to discuss it.
Nice, smooth ending for our 20th episode. See you next week, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.